my
Love
radio
it.
voice. Welcome, everybody. We are so excited that you're joining us on a cold, wintry day in Arkansas. I think wherever you are, it sounds like it's chilly and there's some white stuff falling out of the sky, maybe some rain. We'd love to know where y'all are. If you want to put in the chat where you're located, it's kind of fun for us to know where all you're coming from. We've got more people showing up. We are popular today, Nicole.
Exciting.
Everybody cook something up. I love y'all marketing.
Faithful and freezing rain. That's what we've got here.
Everyone be safe. We hope you're joining us somewhere safe with your blanket and coffee or hot chocolate somewhere warm and cozy for sure.
Good afternoon.
Oh,
Good afternoon.
I don't know if Philip's trying to talk to us or not, but we are going to ask everybody that you mute yourself for now and utilize the chat. We, of course, will have time for questions, and you're welcome to pop those in the chat during the presentation today, or if you want to come off mute at the end, we'll open the floor as well. So thanks again, and welcome. Officially, we're so excited to have you here. You might notice my name is not on the big Speaking of some weather, our leader in charge, Ashley French, is making some adjustments. Some of you guys might have kids. School closure email had to pivot in the day, so you got me instead. I know a lot of these names that I've seen, and I'm excited to be here and partner with Nicole. She's got a wonderful presentation, some awesome content to share with you guys, and talk about the recipe for the right resume. I'm not going to try to say that 3 times. Nicole, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Nicole Parsons. I'm one of the recruiters over here at Arkansas Center for Data Science. A little bit about me. I've come from, a recruiting background in a staffing agency, pivoted to a little bit of employee engagement, onboarding, HR, kind of the whole thing. But happy to be back in recruiting. I'm excited to be here. And we're just going to talk about some resume tips. Now, we'll talk about it a little bit more, but this is just some feedback from us, some of the things that we've seen work in the past. And so take it with a grain of salt. There is no 1000%, right recipe, even though we wish there was. This is just kind of some cool tips and tricks. Kristen, you want to tell us a little bit about ACDS, kind of kick us off, and then I'll take it from there?
Absolutely. Well, I know many of you guys probably know who we are and what we do, but to recap, we are the Arkansas Center for Data Sciences, also known as ACDS, because Arkansas Center for Data Sciences is a mouthful. And we are a nonprofit, of course, based out of Arkansas, and our goal is to get more people working in IT in the state of Arkansas. There are so many IT jobs, whether they're actually in the technology industry or in retail or healthcare. We partner with employers all across the state who need IT help. Maybe it's help desk positions. Maybe it's development positions. Maybe it's IT, data analyst positions. Large companies, small companies, companies in Northwest Arkansas, companies in Central Arkansas. Looks like wherever a lot of people are, wherever the weather, we've got employer partners everywhere. And so our talent team kind of serves as a staffing agency a little bit. We're that go-between, really helping connect you guys as candidates looking for maybe your first or a second, third, fourth IT opportunity, and then our employers who are looking for talent and have some work to be done and want to help grow you and your career. So we do a lot of coaching and talking to candidates, and so we have some great experience on our team. Nicole and I have seen many resumes. We have heard from employers on what they like about resumes. We have been in that seat as well. As a hiring manager, I got to kind of make some decisions off of resumes. So that's what we're going to share with you guys today. Thanks for joining.
Yeah, thank you. Now, hopefully I can get everything to cooperate, be nice. I'm looking off into space because I'm looking at my bigger monitor, so it's a little bit easier for me to read. Being so young, I shouldn't have old eyes, but I have old eyes. So bigger font is better for me. Yeah, like I said, we're here to talk about resumes today. Now, your resume should be a reflection of who you are. We want your resume to really showcase your personality, what you're good at, some of those cool skills. I had old eyes at 10 years old. I 100% agree. but we want to understand a little bit more about you. This is the first thing that employers are going to be seeing. This is their first impression of you, even if they haven't quite met you yet. And so we want to put your best foot forward, and that's just kind of what we're here to do, tell you some of those tips and tricks on the easiest way for employers to be able to see your resume. We want to make it as easy as possible. Whenever they see that resume, they've got some of the key things they need to do to make that hiring decision. And so again, take everything we say with a grain of salt. This is just some of the things that we've seen work in the past, what we personally like as recruiters, what our company partners have said that they've liked. But feel free, drop any questions in the chat. Happy to go over those, either during the presentation, afterwards, just depending on time. So let's talk about the basics, the very basics of your resume, the format. We want it to be in the easiest format, especially when you think of, corporate recruiters or recruiters that see a lot of resumes come through. Typically, they're going to spend, I don't know, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, 3 to 5 seconds on a resume before they kind of move on to the next one. They're getting hundreds of applications come through. And so we don't have the time, unfortunately, to be able to read all the wonderful things that you put on there. So we just want to make sure that we have, those highlights, the most important ones there that are easy to read. A lot of things that, candidates or job seekers may not realize is that a lot of recruiters use systems that scan your resume, right? It weaves out some of those. That way that they're left with a smaller pool to look through. And so we want it to be in one big column. These resume readers, they're going to read left to right. And so if you have multiple columns and you've got all this kind of crazy formatting, it may not read properly and your resume may get kicked back out. So just a little hint there. Easy to read font. I told you I have old eyes. Other recruiters have old eyes. We have tired eyes on top of everything else. Reading so many resumes, looking at all this information, it really wears down, your eyes, your mental capacity. And so, no 6, 8 font. We want at least like 10, 12. Kristen, you can correct me if you're wrong, but that's kind of about where I'm at. And no images. As much as we would love to see your lovely faces, we don't want to open any opportunity for unconscious biases. We don't want anything to pop up that's just unnecessary space, right? We can be using that space for information that's going to showcase a little bit more about your skill sets. What we look like, who we are on the outside has nothing to do with making a hiring decision. We want them to make that hiring decision based on what you're capable of, what you're bringing to the table, and what actually matters when it comes to making that decision. Limited use of color. No rainbows all over the place. Again, tired eyes, it just makes it a little bit distracting, harder to read. Some of those fonts don't always come through properly on the computer. Some people have settings, and so it just kind of messes with it a little bit. So easy black, white font. We've seen blue or red or some of those colors as well. But just limit how many colors we kind of throw out there. And then max of 2 pages. Spending 3 to 5 seconds on a resume, they're probably not going to make it to the second page most of the time. And they're definitely not going to make it to your 6th, 10th, 100th page. So keeping it short, sweet, to the point, but making sure all the essential information is on there. Then the sections, the absolute must-haves on your resume, and we'll break it down a little bit more about what we want to see in each one of these sections, but we want to see at least your name and your contact info, a summary or objective. Let me know what brought you here to this application. Why are you applying to this? What are you looking for? A quick summary about who you are, where you're going, that kind of thing. Your skill sets. These should be bulleted, short, sweet, to the point, your work experience, and then your education. And then we'll break that down just a little bit further about what that means, what that looks like what all we should have on there. And so now that we've kind of covered the basics, we've talked about what you should see on your resume. Based on what we've talked about so far, if you were a recruiter, if you were in the hiring seat, which resume would you probably go for? Would you hire Captain Mark? Would you go for Kelly Test? And drop it in the chat, maybe an explanation of why you pick one over the other or why you like one more than the other. Love to hear your thoughts and opinions on it.
You tell him, Sean. No. Master of Yacht. That just sounds very fancy, though.
Oh yeah, Captain Mark has a lot of good stuff on there. Awesome. Okay. Saw a couple come through. Too many legal landmines.
Plead the fifth.
I love it.
Please the fifth.
Awesome. Okay. A lot of different things on there. Would not hire either. Cool. So I think most everyone agreed Kelly is probably the resume we're going to move forward with. A switch position they're both applying for. I love it. Unfortunately, these are just random templates that we had. One is a template we use and one I found on Google. And so no specific position in mind. But yeah, based on what we talked about, I would go for Kelly. It's one easy column, so it'd probably make it through any resume scanners, anything like that. And like I think someone said in the chat, Captain Mark has a lot going on in his resume. It's just too much information. If you read through it, a lot of it's very repetitive. It looked like they copied and pasted a couple things. And then on top of that, I have to scroll through there, find his information. I can't even, it's not up there at the very top. So it's hard to get to. It's hard to even contact Captain Mark to let him know we're interested in his resume. And I think someone else said too many legal landmines, 1000%. He has way too much personal information on there. Way too much that's going to help make those bias selections, and we just don't want that. Exactly. Captain looks cool, rather that later in the process. Love it. Yeah, it saves a little mystery. We want to get to know you, who you are as a person, some of the personality traits. We'll get that a little bit later on in the application process. But the first step in the process is getting past the recruiter, getting past some of those, artificial things, anything like that. Kristen, did you have something?
Oh, I was just going to say, we're not trying to get somebody to swipe right. This is very different than what we might be putting on our dating profiles. Now, Captain Mark might do pretty well with a picture on his dating profile. Yeah.
I love it.
On resume. My husband's not home, so I can say that, I think. But yeah, guys, so the one thing somebody mentioned, what positions are they applying for? So on Kelly's resume, it does show looking to transition into help desk support. But I'd like to point out, you guys had a quick glance at these resumes, just like a recruiter would have a quick glance at a resume. And look at how you had questions. Like, wait, why are these people even applying to this job? What are they looking for? And that's our goal with our resume, is to not leave those recruiters with questions. We want them to know this is what you're applying for, and this is why this person is very obviously the right candidate. And somebody's telling me not to trust Captain Mark's picture. So yeah, that's true.
And just jumping in, everyone. Hey, good afternoon. Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Ashley Friend.
Oh, I think we lost her.
I think we did too. Is she frozen?
Internet not connecting.
Yep. You're back now.
Well, I just wanted to also mention, if you haven't noticed, recruiters, we're kind of all talkers. And so, when you're a talker, you may not always be the most detailed reader. And so sometimes too much on a resume is just overwhelming. And like the girls have shared, anything to really pop out what you're targeting and what your skills are. And I think we talk about objectives in a minute, but if you think of who's reading this resume, you want to tailor it to what they're looking for, and kind of have it in a very summarized content, so they actually spend the time and read it and hopefully interview you.
Yeah, can I make one more quick point, Nicole? So you referenced earlier the applicant tracking system, and I always like to think about getting a resume to pass two tests, so to speak, right? First, we want to get past that tracking system. Nicole mentioned having one column. Captain Mark has like a half column, 2 column, one. He's got a lot of columns, a lot going on over there. and the system may have trouble reading that. My resume, I was guilty of that mistake. Y'all, it looked so good. I thought my resume was so beautiful and perfect, and it might have looked good to the eyeball, but it did not look good to the tracking system. So step one is that format, getting you past the tracking system. And then step two is the recruiter eyeball that we just talked about. So once you get past the system, you want to make sure that recruiter is seeing what they need to see, and it's easy enough for them to follow too. So kind of two perspectives to keep in mind, and that we've kept in mind, as we're putting our advice together today to share with you.
Awesome. Okay. Todd, I read your question. Is there a tracking system available that we can run a resume through to see how it reads? Love the question. I actually think it's in the resources. So we'll send this presentation out afterwards. I think there's like a whole slide that we have a bunch of resources for you. It's a great question. All right, contact information. What do you need on there? What kind of things are recruiters looking for specifically? So obviously your name, we want to know who you are, what you go by. If you go by something different than your legal name, I would go ahead and include that as well. I personally have seen people use like Michael for an example. They do Michael and then in quotations Mike. I don't have a preference on that one way or the other. Ladies can chime in if they have seen one or the other more. And then where you're located. So you don't need to include your address. I'm not coming to your house. Please don't give me your physical address. We don't need all that information. Just city, state will do just fine. That kind of lets us know the general vicinity of where you are. And then are you open to relocation? A lot of the time, some of these positions you're looking at, are you willing to relocate to, if you're in Central Arkansas, you come into Northwest Arkansas. If you are applying for a position that's outside of, where you're located, and I don't see that open to relocation, that may be something where I'm not going to look at it as much, just because then are you really interested? Did you see where it's located? Are we going to have to go through this whole dance of talking about that? And so letting recruiters know up front can kind of help answer some of those questions, help, negate any reason for us to say no right off the bat when that really shouldn't have happened. And then how to contact you. Captain Mark had his information on there, but it's a little bit further down, had to dig for it. If we want to call you, we want to be able to call you quickly, send you an email, let you know, hey, we're interested. Recruiters move like 90 miles a minute, and so they are clicking like the wind. It's insane. And so making it as easy as possible for them to get a hold of you. We want that information up there at the very top. Make sure it's a valid phone number. Make sure it's in service. Make sure you're checking your voicemail box isn't full, and your email. So if you have your email, check your spams, check your junk folder, anything like that, especially if you've been applying a lot. I think Jenny actually mentioned this. Her last name is Sales, and so it goes to junk a lot or goes to spam, and so you may not get her information. So checking that will kind of let you know, maybe you have something in there. And then LinkedIn, GitHub. This is absolutely not required. We've seen candidates put it on there. Great. If it's not on there, it's not a deal breaker. It's not one way or the other. If you're looking for a development job, highly suggest putting the GitHub on there, because a lot of those recruiters or hiring managers are going to want to go out there and see what projects you have available, what you've already put out there in the world, and kind of do a little bit of that back-end search. Some recruiters, if they're super interested, might look at your LinkedIn anyway, do a little cyber creeping, so just heads up on that side. Summary and objective. Ashley, you want to take a stab at this one?
Well, sure, you're doing so good. I don't want to mess up you, rocking and rolling. But, I think, again, clean, simple. That's going to be the right recipe, guys, on, being easy to read. And, in my past as an IT recruiter, I've received an application and had the thought, did they apply to the right position? Did they know that they were applying for a developer position? And, everything is accounting in their background. So I think overcoming that in your objective as a statement, it's usually at the best if it's a sprinkle about you, kind of what you've done, what you've been industry wise, and then what you're targeting. This is also going to help on kind of the ATS keyword matching. So
Mhm.
if you're applying for a system analyst or a data analyst and it sees those specific words on your resume, that kind of gives you brownie points on the back end. And then, also highlight your superpower. What's your strong suit?
Oh, bless the internet.
Oh no, is she still frozen? I feel like it's
Yeah.
the same face that she was making last time. um, I actually was talking about superpowers. So those things that you know that you are good at, that you are confident about, and maybe you'll get an interview question about later, you can already kind of tease the employer with, including that in your objective and summary statement. And then if it's not already included in kind of your contact info that Nicole mentioned, if you're open to relocation, this is another potential place to include that. That's usually one of the first filters, as Nicole was saying, that recruiters will look at to say, okay, are you close enough to me to not need to relocate? And so that's an opportunity to knock it out. I will say, there's a lot of back and forth, and I've seen very conflicting opinions on these summary and objective statements out on the internet. And my thoughts on it, once again, for what they're worth, is if you can put that summary statement on anybody's resume, on your mama's, cousins, aunties, uncles, boyfriends, whatever, right, resume, then it's not helpful. It's not doing anything unique to you. If it is written well, then it is unique to you. It is saying what you're looking for, why you're looking. It's answering any questions a recruiter might have, like Ashley said, about why you're looking for a job, things like that. So only want to include it. That's valuable real estate based on your resume. It's usually pretty close to the top. So if you're going to include it, be sure it's unique to you and it's adding some good value.
Yeah, so your skills section, again, I think Ashley mentioned it, making sure whenever the tracking systems are searching through there, want some of those keywords to pull your resume. If I'm hiring for a developer position, Kristen may be able to tell you a little bit more. But I'm going to look for some of those key things. What's on the job resume or the job description? What is the company looking for? I'm going to type in those keys, and those resumes that pull up, those are the ones I'm going to call first, just because I know they've had experience with it, or I know they kind of fit into that bucket that I'm looking for. And so, especially if you're looking for like some of these niche positions, if you're looking at data analysts, you want to make sure SQL's on there, Excel, or anything like that. We just want to make sure your resume is going to be pulled into that, to be called pile. Kristen, did you have anything you wanted to add on this one?
Yeah, these skills are where so many of those keywords are going to come into play. We talked about the applicant tracking system, and a lot of times when recruiters post a job, they can set up behind the scenes in their tracking system certain keywords, certain skills, certain technologies, softwares, right? Things that they want the system to help look through resumes and find. And the skill section is one of the easiest ways to hit a lot of those. And from a recruiter's eyeball perspective, it is an easy way for a recruiter to see a lot of skills and see them in one place. The way that I kind of look at a resume is I kind of scan it from top to bottom. And the more, skills, keywords that I see, kind of the more stars or points or marks or whatever I'm giving in my head. And then when I get to the bottom, if I feel like there's an overwhelming amount of those, and I'm like, heck yeah, this person had a whole lot of really good skills and keywords, right? So the skill section is an easy, great way to do that. Highly recommend listing as many hard skills as you can. What we mean by that are the software, the technologies, the platforms, right? Things that you've taken training classes on. I get a ton of questions, and a lot of people say, but I've only taken a class on this. I haven't actually used it yet. And that's okay. I want to remind you that you don't have to be equally as knowledgeable in all of your skills. I have done certain things way more than I have done other things, but it doesn't mean that those other things maybe aren't still skills, right? I talk a whole lot more than I cook, but I made some pretty good cookies this weekend, so that can still be a skill. So you don't have to be equally as knowledgeable in everything you put on your resume. And you can always have the conversation later in an interview. So don't feel like you have to be an expert at everything to list in the skill section. And then if you want to, if you do feel really strong and have a lot of customer service experience, We've got customer relationship management on here. If you've done some mentoring or coaching or other maybe soft skills like that, don't hesitate to put those on there too. You don't want to have a whole page of skills or anything like that, but if you need some more space and you've got some really strong soft skills, I mean, those are important and sometimes harder to find. So don't want to discourage you from including those as well.
Yeah, and I think the only other thing I wanted to add is just making sure that it's easy to read. And so kind of following the format that's there on the screen, you can either list out like that and separate them by bullet points. You can put them in 2 columns. That's kind of where the column is okay, because even if I read it left to right, I'm still getting the same information. I'm getting some of those keywords. But yeah, just easy to read. That way, like Kristen said, if I'm reading top to bottom, I can scan, see all the skills that you're coming to the table with, and then kind of go from there. Your work experience. This is where I feel like I think a couple recruiters have a different set of opinions. So I'll kind of tell you my opinion. Feel free to jump in, ladies, if you want. But as far as work experience, I want to see the most recent one there at the very top, you know, what you're doing currently. And then I only need a couple bullet points, you know, some of those essential job duties, the ones where you can weave in, you know, utilized this to pull reports, or I did this, and this. Be as specific as you can. Metrics are great. I come from a corporate background where metrics were everything. They like to see, you know, percentages that you did, or how many customers you did, or talking about rebuilding computers. How many? You know, give me an idea of what that looked like. Was it 1 computer? Was it 30 computers? You know, anything that can give me an idea. And that's also going to help your resume kind of stand out, because then it's not only, you know, have experience rebuilding computers. Okay, cool. In my head, it could be 1, and I'm like, that's great. But if you had 30, that's way more impressive. That's going to stand out a little bit more. It's going to give me a better idea that you've not only done it once, you've done it multiple times. And so now I know that that skill is repetitive and that it is, you know, repeatable. You have been able to do it multiple times. And so that's my personal preference, giving some of those high level bullet points. If it's going to cause your resume to go 4 or 5 pages, reduce the number of bullet points. don't include all those bullet points, you know, condense it down to the main ones that are going to apply maybe specifically to the job you're applying for. And I forgot to mention that earlier. Don't be afraid to have multiple versions of your resume, especially if you're entry level into IT, looking to get into whatever you can get into, because it's kind of a competitive market, right? And so if you're open to going into help desk, but you're also willing to do, you know, data analyst, but you haven't quite decided which way you want to go, have one for both. Have one where your objective says, you know, specifically for help desk, you know, maybe you showcase a little bit more of those skills on that resume. And so it can be a little bit of work, but being able to kind of tailor your resume to the position that you're applying for really goes a long way. If I see your resume comes through and it's all about, you know, working on hardware, you've done this and this, you got your CompTIA on there, my recruiter brain goes, cool, he's help desk or she's help desk. They're going to fit into this bucket. But if I'm looking on my data analyst position, unless I see something in there, it may not pull it for the data analyst position. And so just tailoring your resume a little bit one way or the other might help. And then watching your verbiage. So on your most current work history, if that's the job that you're currently at, using present tense verbs. We are a little particular sometimes, we are a little snobby. Just making sure if you're talking about jobs that you've done in the past, that it's all in past tense verbs, keeping it all very consistent will help you come across a little bit better.
I love it, Nicole. Only little thing that I
Yeah.
would just so everybody knows, recruiters can totally tell if you copied the job description and pasted it onto your resume. That's a wonderful cheat code. However, but no, I have seen some resumes before where it was very obvious somebody kind of copied and pasted the description from when they applied to the job and put it on my resume. And I think that's a great starting point, but I want to encourage you to put a little bit more time and effort into it. Like Nicole was saying, if you're just copying description,
Mhm.
what the role was, then you're not talking about the impact. So talking about here's the work you did, the impact you made, those numbers, throwing those numbers.
Mhm.
There's a really good formula I've seen. I don't know if I remember it, but it's I'll have to see if I can find it and throw it in the chat. Something about, did accomplished X by Y amount or
Mm.
Z, something like that. So it said, here was the action you took or the work that you did. Here was the impact of that. So it actually showed the value of what you were doing. Because that's a lot of times those behavioral interview questions, that's a lot of times what those employers are going to be after. So that was the only other thing I think I
Yeah.
wanted to. Yeah.
That was great. Thank you. And I think someone brought this up earlier, but education and training. This is kind of where you can showcase, I think Kristen said, about some of those classes that you've been taking, any of those cool things, especially with IT, because there's so many different resources online that you can kind of include in there. And if this is your first time breaking into the IT space, it might help to include that you are taking a course through Udemy or you are taking some kind of online certification, just so that employer knows you are taking those steps to get ready for an IT career. You have put in some of the work, you are getting prepared. It just kind of helps sell your case a little bit more. And so as far as education, we usually like to see that university, the college, the name of the school, the degree that you received, and then the year of graduation, if it's less than 10 years. If it was, many, many years ago, that's great, but it's not relevant anymore. And so sleep off the date, but go ahead and put that you have your degree and then the school you got it from. Online training program name. So if you're taking a course through Udemy, make sure you put that on there, the course that you took. Any coding boot camps, those are great to see on resumes. It really helps us understand that you went through that rigorous course, that you've done everything that you need. And then being able to add that on there. And I don't know if I have a section on this, but projects. I like to see project sections. I see some nodding heads from my fellow recruiters. And so just a heads up, if you're at development, putting that on there, even data analytics, whenever you've worked in, some big data sets, something like that. I think that's always good to include on there. But yeah, I think that's all I had on this one. Kristen?
Don't be afraid to add something in progress. You don't have to have completed school or training or your boot camp to include it on your resume. It's okay to put, I'm currently taking these Udemy classes or these UHC classes if you're part of our reskill program, and put in progress or expected completion August 2022. Oh my gosh. Whatever it is, kind of giving them an expected date. It also might help hold you accountable, but make sure those dates are updated. I think I was on an interview the other day and someone's resume said expected completion spring of 2021, and I was like, wow, did you do it? And then if you didn't, now you have to answer why not, so make sure that's updated if you include that. But highly recommend including, even if something's in progress, because it also helps answer the question, what are you doing right now to further your education?
Awesome. And then to the question that just came through, how about freecodecamp.org? I think that that's perfectly fine. I would definitely go ahead and include that, what the certification program or what courses you're taking through them, just to include it on there. But yeah, I think that's perfectly fine. All right. So I think that was kind of our last slide. So we're kind of winding down, ready for some Q&A, any questions that you may have. There's a resource slide that is at the very end of this presentation, and so I'll send that out for everyone, hopefully this afternoon. But that way you can go in there and take a look at some of those.
Nicole, do we have the slide that shows the resume scanners? We can talk about that for a minute.
Yeah, I think it's on this one.
Yeah. So I don't remember who it was who was asking. Todd was asking, is there a tracking system available that you can run your resume
typo
to see how it would read? And so we've got one at the top, jobscan.com, And then cultivated culture, you'll see on here a couple of times. They have a lot of awesome resources. They have one as well. Also, I think it's called revamp. We'll be sure we send it out for you. But the idea behind these is that you can upload your resume as a PDF, or I think you can even just copy and paste it. And then you upload a job description, and it will tell you what percentage match a lot of the keywords on that job description are with your resume. I don't think it can ever be perfect, so I think they try to walk you through. Here's how we can try to get your number higher, get you to maybe an 80% match rate. It also will help you see, like on my resume with the multiple columns, it helped me see how it interpreted the data, and I could tell it was not the way that I expected it to. And so that was how I knew my formatting was off a little bit as well. So, or the other thing you could do is, I think you can just upload it to Indeed. If you upload a resume to Indeed or LinkedIn and see how it parses it, that may help answer that parsing question a little bit too. For free and pretty easy. So if it doesn't parse it right, then there's probably some formatting that's funky. But there's some awesome resume schema. I think that's my favorite thing I've learned about resume since I joined the team a couple years ago.
Yeah, so it says, how about cover letters? My opinion, I don't typically read them, but that's just a me thing. I think it's also kind of reading your audience, right? If you're applying to more of a big wig corporate environment, they like to see those cover letters. They like to, see that little extra effort for you. So I don't think it's a bad thing, but I think it's just to know your audience kind of thing.
As a recruiter, I always start with a resume, and that's usually always required. Some companies require a cover letter, but I think most of the time they don't. And once again, going back to, it's a whole lot of words. Now, I think a cover letter could be helpful if you, once again, the kind of like we were talking about your summary statement, if you use it to tell your story, if it's very unique. Not if you're copying and pasting. Here's my length of skills. I am a dedicated, motivated candidate. So is everybody, right? We know that. so if it's telling your story about, being a stay-at-home mom for a while and looking to enter the, and here's some of the training that you've done in the last couple of years to get ready, and you're so excited about this job because it offers this opportunity, and maybe the apprenticeship type role is most interesting to you because it would build on, this kind of training. So I think it can be helpful. Once again, it just really needs to be tailored, make it worth their time to read it,
Yeah. So I think there's a couple questions about sending out the slides and the resources. We'll definitely get all of that sent out as soon as possible. And then will the session go out on video? Typically, as long as we didn't completely bomb the video, it will go up on our YouTube channel. And so we should see that come out soon, just as soon as our marketing team can get it edited, get all the, intros and exits edited out, and then we'll get it uploaded.
Nicole, here's another one for you. I answered a little bit in the chat, but maybe you can speak on any advice if your current position has very little relation to the position you're seeking.
Yeah, I think it's still good to have it on there. If it's your most current position, even if it's not applicable to what you're applying for, I think you should still go ahead and add it. I think the big thing that kind of ties back to the objective, letting them know why you're there, what you're looking to go into. But if you don't have all of your updated information on your resume, like your job history, what you've been doing recently, then there's huge gaps in your resume, and that's going to be its own issue on itself. And so we just want to make sure that there's no big issues, no random gaps in your work history that's going to make us as a recruiter say, oh, they haven't worked in 6 years, or, whatever the case is. So even if it's not applicable, we still want to know what you've been doing, because some of those skills still translate over, right? If you've been working in an office, that kind of skills transfer over. If you've done customer service, that tells me that you can talk to people and that you know how to be, pleasant and professional. And so there's different things from some of your other work history that we can definitely pull over and that translates into a different role. Great question.
Yeah, Todd, I agree 100%. Those transferable skills are the ones I would highlight in your skill section, in your bullets when you're talking about your previous history. And then we kind of briefly touched on it, but projects. What are you doing right now to show that you are interested and to grow your skills in this new area? If you're developing a website, or if you're part of a group or a club that does some stuff, or if you're looking for a data analyst job, talk about maybe an at-home project. Did you develop a budget? Even some small stuff that you might just be doing for fun, you can figure out how to put on your resume and say, yeah, here's some experience that I have doing this. So utilize that project section, and for sure think about those transferable skills too. What else? So I'll keep throwing some questions in for us. Have we ever hired anyone that didn't have an online presence? Nicole, any thoughts on your online presence? LinkedIn?
I don't. If you don't have any online preference or online presence, that's completely fine. It's not you have to be online. We're not going to force you into the internet if that's not something you're comfortable with, because not everyone's comfortable with having their information out there. So I think that's completely fine. It's just, if you are out there on the internet, making sure that what you have out there is appropriate. If it's public, keeping that in mind as well. Some employers can go out there and search your name. It's super easy. So just being cautious on some of that. The way you put out there is pretty public. And so, no, it doesn't affect, if you're not out there, that's not going to affect anything.
But if you have some time and you're not getting a response online, maybe that is the next step. If you are applying to a lot of jobs that are online, then I would utilize those online resources. If you're applying to jobs with people that you know, then utilize the ability to network with those people. So I would think about, how you're applying to jobs, and then, targeting the best way that you can to get them. If you are applying to jobs on LinkedIn, make sure you have a good LinkedIn profile. There are tons of recruiters who live in LinkedIn, and they'll reach out to you on LinkedIn. So building that presence up can never hurt if you've got the time and the resource, for sure. Yeah, Joanna, I think we both wrote your name down, so we'll be sure we follow up with you either today or tomorrow. Seth, y'all are sending such good questions. Keep them coming. Seth asked a question, Nicole, about gaps. If you do have them, what's the best way to handle it?
Yeah, I think it just depends on how long your gap was, where it is on your resume, and kind of what that looks like. I personally, Kristen, you can jump in if you have a difference of opinion. If you're a stay-at-home parent, if you were a caregiver, if something happened, I don't think that's wrong to go ahead and just put the dates that you were employed or whatever that date of the gap was, and just put caregiver, taking care of parents, taking care of spouse, whatever was going on there. If you're a stay-at-home parent, I think that that's fine. We actually have recently encountered a couple applicants where there was a very large gap on their application. And I'm like, okay, have you just not worked in, 8-10 years? What's kind of going on? And it turns out they're a stay-at-home parent, and there's nothing wrong with that. Absolutely nothing wrong. But now we ran into the issue of maybe their application wasn't being looked at because it looks like they haven't worked in that long. If it's like a 3-month, 4-month, I don't think there's any need to kind of put that on there. So it really just depends on the situation and where it falls on your resume, I think.
Yeah, I think we're getting better in this day and age and time and pandemic and whatever's going on, right? People working from home. I think employers and recruiters are getting better at the way and maybe the intention behind asking that question. I remember from my corporate days, it was almost a negative thing if you had taken a break and justify a gap in your resume. And I think now, instead of so much justification, it's more just about explanation. It's, hey, what were you doing? Just so they understand, and you can kind of say, yeah, that I was home, this is what I had going on. Don't necessarily assume that it's a bad thing or feel like you have to justify or defend yourself. Just give a very simple explanation if you're in an interview or even on your resume about, here's what I was doing at that point in my life.
Kristen, there was a question I thought maybe you might be better to answer. Where's a good place to find a project to add to GitHub? Our own personal code slinger, Kristen.
Okay. Could be a couple places. Maybe we'll send out our training flyer with some good training resources when we email everybody. But if you have been a part of, some online learning, that somebody mentioned Free Code Camp or Code Academy, a lot of those online classes would include a project. So if you have a project you've made from one of those classes, I would say use that and put it in your GitHub. The other best resource would be friends, family. Somebody probably has a problem that could be solved with code. Throw it out on your social media. Hey, I'm looking to dabble in some development. Does anybody have a project they'd like me to help them with? If it's a to-do list application or some kind of automation, maybe it's I don't know, automating something, at your house, creating a schedule for whenever you need to do certain chores. I've had a lot of chores in my house lately, so that's been on my mind, right? Whatever it is that you feel like might be a problem or something you can do around your house or for family or friends. Or if there's another nonprofit, we're a nonprofit, and nonprofits have sometimes limited resources or may not be able to hire, one person to do a bajillion different tasks that need to get done. And so they may be willing to say, hey, yeah, if you want to volunteer some time, here's a thing that we need. Would love to have some help. Jenny, I love that idea. Recommend in the chat a pet shelter. That might be cool to help them create a database or automate some kind of process. Or even maybe do some, automation for marketing or social media analytics or who knows, right? There's all kinds of ideas out there. So, so that might give you some ideas. Hope that helps a little bit. Anybody else have anything else? Nicole, can you think of any other places to go?
Yeah, I think you kind of nailed all the places to go, but I think that's the really cool thing about like developer projects or anything along that line is the opportunities are literally endless. I think when it comes to a project, I personally don't think it has to be anything super crazy, right? We're not talking you solve the world's issues with your project or anything. Employers mostly just want to see, what you're doing. You've been able to make some kind of functioning website or a video game or anything, right? That you know how to go in there and code, that you've been able to produce something from your skill set. We've seen employees do like a personal website where it's like a video or a website resume. And so it had all their information out there. You can kind of go out there, learn a little bit more about them. We've had some that built a site to keep up with tennis games between him and his brother. And it was just a petty family bragging rights kind of thing. And so it doesn't have to be anything crazy. You can go help pet shelters, which I love that idea so much. Definitely do that. But you can, whatever comes to mind, chores, yourself, helping others, put it on social media, so whatever the case is. But I think it's just a matter of getting started and getting something out there. Awesome. And then Sean, if you've worked a bunch of temporary gigs, can you combine that experience to shorten the length of the work history? I think absolutely, especially if it was within, a confined time space. If it was, well, I guess no. Now that I'm saying out loud, I think I just agreed with myself. I think it's fine when you start to when you end. And then that way, if it overlaps, someone may ask you, were you working both at the same time? You can say, well, I did temporary jobs, or you can put on their contract jobs. But I think that's perfectly fine to combine it. Of course.
Yeah, Sean, if it feels like it's taken up, like if you got a 7-page resume, then it might be a different conversation. So some of these answers, y'all, are hard to give a matter of fact. It just kind of depends, what you got and how much is there. So it depends on the situation. But if it feels like you've got a whole bunch of things that are repeated over and over, maybe you can group it together and say you did some construction contract work. I don't know. I'm coming up with something. I don't know if you're a construction guy or not, Sean.
I used to tell people when I was at Staff Mark to just list Staff Mark and the different types of position underneath of it, and then put the full date that you were working at Staff Mark.
Right. So if you feel like you're copying and pasting the same thing over and over and just changing the job title or the dates, then Okay, gotcha. Yeah, so maybe you can condense, a little bit and just have an extended timeline and then group together, a couple of different customers. And in your bullets, you could say you worked with this many different clients or this many customers over this period of time, and kind of frame it like that. Just depends on, once again, the data and how much space it takes up, that kind of stuff. It's tough, y'all. There's not one formula. My math
And
wants there to be a one formula, one size fits all, and really there's not. Every recruiter, every company is going to be looking for different things, and hopefully that encourages you in a good way, because that means there's not a right or wrong. It doesn't mean that your resume is wrong. It just means you can strengthen it and add to it and edit and make it a little bit better. I think probably any of us could look at our resumes, even the ones of us who do this for a living. It's the hardest for me to write my own resume. I'll tell you that much. So we live in the world all day, and it's even hard for us sometimes. But we're here to help you. So if you'd like to do a resume review, you are welcome to reach out to us. I always like to ask that you take a stab at it first, and you have something to start with, and then we're happy to work with you and collaborate and figure out better ways to word things or rearrange it on the page for you. Ooh, CL, that's a good point. Good question. I don't think right now we give notifications when we upload something on our YouTube page. I feel like the correct response to this, the YouTuber response, is subscribe and click the bell. So I guess you can subscribe and click the bell if you want to. Yep. But hey, that's a good point. We'll bring that back to our marketing team and to our team and see if there's a little email campaign. We try not to blow everybody's emails up, because the more we send y'all, the fewer you read. So we try not to blow them up. But maybe we can work on figuring out how to let you know when we have something new uploaded. But for sure, good point. Philip, Jenny, do you have a good answer for Philip's question? The question is, have we ever had someone participate in the program and then gain employment in another occupation?
We have. I think, as people, we evolve. We gain knowledge. We combine it with something we have, and that creates a whole nother set of skills. And often what happens is those combined skills can determine, you may get in there and go, oh, well, I really thought I would love numbers. I thought I was going to be great as a data analyst, but I absolutely hate it. But they still love numbers. And so maybe they redirect and reevaluate, and maybe they're, wanting to learn more about coding. I mean, I think that there's lots of things. I'm a little older, so I have had many careers, and my careers are from opposite ends of the spectrum. And I think that that's okay. It's hard. It's not easy to switch careers and to move forward. So it's always best if you can pick up the skills that you have and add them to create, to move into a new position where you can use both of those skills. But I think, we have had some people that gained employment into the program and then decided to go a different route, either by expanding and growing. That happens more often. They start in an IT journalist position. Okay, now I got this. I want to learn more. I'm doing a little coding over here on the side or web development, and now I'm looking for something to grow, So that can happen, or it can be completely opposite. I've had people that have joined us that were in aviation that went into data analytics, and vice versa. I actually also work on the other side of the house as well in the advanced manufacturing. So I see both sides of that coin. But I think that as long as you're adding skills to yourself and to who you are, you're always going to be valuable. So knowledge is always key to becoming more and being the best that you can be. So, never give up. Continue to learn, whether it be through our resources or any resources. I always say, check your free resources first. Use those before you pay for a resource.
Tell our team, listen to some motivational. But to add one more note, Philip, nobody's job path or career path is linear. So 100%. And it won't hurt our feelings if, if we work with you for a little bit and then you decide you're not interested in IT anymore. We've had that happen. Totally understand. There's no, once again, no right or wrong next step. It's whatever you want to do and whatever you enjoy the most. So how much is too much? Nicole Philip wants to know how much is too much in your skills or experience.
Oh, I would keep it shorter. I don't want to see, half of your resume just being a bunch of bullet points on skills, which I know is counterintuitive to kind of what we're saying. I don't know. I don't have a set number, 10 skills, maybe 15, if you can make 3 columns. I don't know, Kristen, do you have like a suggestion?
Yeah, I would say probably no more than a 2-page resume. If you're getting more than 2 pages, then what I would do is ask some friends to look at it. Say, hey, what do you think at first glance at this resume? Ask friends or family. And if they're like, oh, that's overwhelming, then you got your answer. Right? So use your friends, use your resources, because they'll love you and they'll be honest with you for sure.
I always say relate it to the job you're applying for.
Yes. Those targeted resumes. I know Nicole mentioned it earlier.
Yeah, targeted skills. Yeah.
It makes sense to have a resume. If you're applying to data analytics jobs and development jobs, it might make sense to have 2 resumes for those. Just make sure you use the right one when you apply. You might want to name them something different.
Hey, Kristen. So there was a question, how about other upload platforms? I know GitHub's the most common one that I see, but I don't know enough about the other ones to say one way or the other.
Yeah, I Googled those and it looked like those were potential alternatives to YouTube, upload video platforms. And I think that's more of a question for a marketing team. And at least right now, our standard is to use YouTube. I'm not sure about, the credibility of some of those other ones. And what might happen there. So I think that's a good point, but I think that's more of a kind of marketing team question. So
I don't know why I still had developer in my head then. Oops.
All right.
Awesome.
This has been so wonderful. Thank you so much for all your questions. Nicole, anything else to end us on?
No, I appreciate all of the questions, the participation. This has been really helpful. So I appreciate your time.
Thanks, guys. We'll be in touch and don't hesitate to reach out with questions, comments, concerns. Have a great afternoon. Stay warm.
Thank you.